There's only one reason why your customers aren't buying: status quo bias. Which means I have some good news and some bad news for you. The bad news: for them, doing nothing is better than doing something. Choosing not to proceed is better than proceeding. The good news: now that you know, you can do something about it. Hi, I'm Bri Williams, the behaviour changer. In this video, I'm going to share real-life examples of brands trying to displace status quo, what they've done right and what they've done wrong. This is a sample of content from my Just Do This small business program. It shows you how to use behavioural science across every aspect of your business, from invoice design and pricing to retaining customers and increasing productivity. You can find out more at briwilliams.com. Now, let's start with what status quo actually is. Status quo bias. I often say that loss aversion, people's fear of what they have to lose, is the most powerful behavioural bias in business. It means there's an asymmetry in risk versus reward, where the payoff for proceeding needs to be at least double the risk of failing. Well, there's another bias that sits alongside loss aversion, and that's status quo bias, the general preference to leave things as they are. The type of thinking where if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and it's better the devil you know. Because customers are very quick to identify the risks of proceeding. Money is the big one, time is another, along with social standing. What they aren't so great at is identifying the risks of not proceeding. And that's what we need to help them with. Today, we're going to be using comparisons to break through status quo, and I'll be showing you how across 3 scenarios. Number 1, switching the way they currently solve a problem. Number 2, changing their approach to solving the problem. And number 3, doing something about a problem they didn't even know they had. Let's start with the first scenario, switching the way they currently solve a problem. In this scenario, your prospective customer has already identified they have a problem and a way to solve it. In other words, they're using your competitor's product. That means if you're Coke, you need to wean them off Pepsi, for example. This is a like-for-like switch. We're offering a version of what they're used to. So our task is to convince them that we're better, faster, or less expensive. Here are a couple of examples, starting with Genius AI. This is a price-led comparison with Hootsuite's annual cost of $1,188 on the left and Genius AI lifetime access of $99 on the right. Now, the positioning is important here because we're moving from the incumbent on the left to the new player on the right. In Western cultures, where we learn to read left to right, we psychologically place old on the left and progress on the right. That means they've got their side-by-side correct here. Added to that, the principle of anchoring means the first number we see anchors expectations. Because we see $11.88 on the left, this makes $99 seem much less expensive. Genius AI have also used a vibrant colour on their side with a dull charcoal for their competitor Hootsuite. This is good too because we want the older brand to look less enticing. And the use of emoji is probably appropriate here as it's for a Facebook audience. And it adds some emotional interest to the ad. But what isn't so great? The lifetime access message against Hootsuite's annual cost gets lost. Swapping the position of the emoji so the recurring versus one-off cost message was closer to the price would have helped. Also, there's research to suggest that low-price messages are more effective if the price is literally lower on the page. So that's something they could test as well. Finally, the price difference is so large, I'm not sure it seems believable. And being an unfamiliar brand advertising on Facebook, I fear it simply doesn't seem like a credible comparison. There's cheap, but then there's too cheap. And when it seems too cheap, all you've done is increase their fear of switching from what they're using to you. The key lesson with a price-led comparison, like we've seen here, is that it needs to be believable. You need to explain why you are so much less expensive or choose another more realistic comparison. Now, Webinar Kit have steered clear of price and they're using another way of convincing customers to learn more. Features. Here we have Webinar Kit comparing themselves to unnamed them, suggesting their target audience knows who the major player is. The best thing about this ad is its visual impact. Strong use of green ticks and red crosses in a list of features really sends a message. You're left in no doubt that there are upsides to Webinar Kit and downsides to the incumbent. Now, some of the features like everything you need are nonsense, but the visual of all ticks good, all crosses bad is effective. But as I mentioned in the Genius AI example, the sequence of left to right is important. Reversing the order with them on the left and Webinar Kit on the right would better support the message of moving from the old towards the new. A final example of trying to convince people to switch from a competitor comes from Tidy Cow. Like Genius AI, this is a price-led comparison. But unlike Genius AI, it seems believable, with Calendly at $144 per year and Tidy Cow only $29 for a once-off. As you can guess by now, I would like to see the side-by-side reversed, with Calendly on the left and the new offer Tidy Cow on the right. However, I really like their use of colour here, with the vibrant blue for them and the dull grey for Calendly. And their $29 price pops in Go For It green. The price even looks like a button to press, inferring the desired action. And see how the one-time payment is close to the price? This again is an improvement on how Genius AI laid out the design elements, because it ties the price and the benefit of paying once closely together, making the comparison to Calendly's annual cost more impactful. I like how they say what they do, being a complete calendar and booking solution. Note how complete is a way to reduce people's fear of what they're missing, and contrast that with Calendly scheduling meetings the old way. Saying old is a great way to make it seem out of date, and no one wants to feel like they're being left behind. And finally, note the more subtle use of emojis in this ad compared to Genius AI. Emojis are so vivid that you want them to support your message rather than steal focus from more important elements. And I think they've done it really well here. Okay, so 3 examples of direct competitor comparisons to displace the status quo. But what if we're not a direct competitor and instead offer a new approach to solving the problem? That is scenario number 2. Changing their approach to solving the problem. In this scenario, we're not just an alternative product. Our product is an alternative way to tackle the same problem. In this case, if you're Coke, you're targeting coffee drinkers as an alternative way to get a caffeine fix, which is what herbal brand Apothecary is trying to do, although they want people to swap coffee and wine with herbal remedies. On their website, for example, they suggest which products can be used as an alternative to wine or alcohol. But that's on their website, which requires people be aware of them. Let's look at the Facebook ad that first got my attention. Here we see a side-by-side comparison of a glass of wine and the Apothecary drops. As we discussed using the direct competitor contrast in the first status quo scenario, I like that they're using left-right positioning, with the old approach to solving the problem, drinking wine to wind down, on the left, and the new herbal approach on the right. They've also matched the colours of the rosé wine and the herbal remedy to make the 2 products seem more alike. This is a useful way to bridge conceptual divides when you're dealing with an alternative approach to a product. I also like that they've used ticks and crosses to make the downside of wine more obvious. What I don't like? The font is too light and too small to be effective. Here's another example from Leica Pet Food. They're trying to convince dog owners to switch from kibble dry food to their fresh food. What have they done well? Left to right positioning of kibble as the old approach and the Leica as the new. And I like that they've used red for kibble to infer stop and green for Leica to infer go. but they haven't explained why many of the features of kibble are bad. For example, cooked dry at 100 to 200 degrees seems okay to me, and so does standardized serving sizes. Even referring to a 2-year shelf life doesn't seem so bad. Life is a positive word, so referring to shelf life misses the mark. Further, while it's great they've included pictures of dogs to attract the attention of dog owners, having an old retriever yawning doesn't meaningfully support their message. They would have been better to include the same breed in different states of vibrancy to support the nutritional message. But the biggest miss? No ticks and crosses to ram home the message. Something they addressed in this second ad from them. Again, it's great they've moved from left to right, away from kibble and towards Leica. They're using grayscale for kibble to make it seem old and unappealing, and colour for Leica to underline the vibrant nutritional message. 2 other improvements they've made: the ticks and crosses, as I mentioned, reiterating the downside of kibble and upside of Leica. And most importantly, the copy explaining why kibble is a poor choice and Leica is a good one. I mean, who'd want to feed their dog kibble when it contains synthetic additives and is pumped with preservatives so it can sit on the shelf for years, when they can have Leica that is gently cooked from fresh ingredients? Well, I think the font is too small and the food doesn't look as appetizing as you'd want it to. This ad is a much more effective one at combating customer status quo. Right, so in both scenarios so far, your target customer is already spending money to solve a problem. But what if they haven't done anything about it? What if they don't even realize they have a problem? That is our third status quo scenario, which is something I share exclusively with members of my Just Do This small business optimization program. Because finding interesting clips on YouTube might feel like you're getting answers, but it relies on you knowing what you're looking for. With Just Do This, I've created exactly what you need to optimize every aspect of your business. Don't leave it to chance. Find out more at briwilliams.com.